Hello, and welcome again to Freedom Keeper Senior Edition. This is our fourth episode with myself, Irene, and my co-host, Beverly. We call it Immigration Part 2, or Outside Influencers. We'll be bringing you a great deal of information today on the political subversion of our country through illegal mass migration, as well as the effects similar subversion had on our European neighbors across the waters. So stick with us. I guarantee you we'll make it worth your while.
Hopefully. The seal of the United States has on it the Latin phrase e pluribus unum, or translated meaning out of many one. This was adopted by our founding fathers as the unofficial motto of our country, or the coming together of many people with shared principles and values. It's been the basis for the forming of our democratic republic, and we all need to remember it.
And that's true, we do. It's very important. Just an FYI, we do a lot of research, Beverly and I, to bring you facts on our podcast episodes. So none of this is really based on just our opinions. And because the facts are sometimes so show-stopping and certainly not reported to you by our media, it's important we bring them to you so you are well informed. Much of what we will be discussing today will not be heard on CNN, MSNBC, nor on Fox. So please share these facts with your friends and family.
Folks, there's a darkness descending over America today, and it's really threatening our lives, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We must all become freedom keepers to help keep America the land of the free because of the brave, or we will see the greatest collapse of freedom the world has ever seen. And it's up to you and to all of us.
I'll be starting us off today by relaying information on who exactly these outside influencers are. They're primarily countries and what they have done and are continuing to do. As the Europeans were ahead of us by a decade or about 15 years on mass migration, later on, Beverly's going to be covering the aftermath or results of what that has done to our European friends. So we're going to start off with Mexico. The British have 10 consulate offices in the United States. The Chinese have 5, but the Mexicans have 53. Now, why is that? In 2024, they worked tirelessly to influence our election. Mexico is not our friend. They have been actively working for illegal mass migration into the U.S. for the past 15, 20 years. Their political leaders announced publicly on TV and in their press that Mexico will reclaim their territory that the U.S. took over in 1848, which was approximately 55% of their lands, as it is all Mexican territory. They will do this by promoting mass migration into the U.S. and will use their 53 consulates to do training for activists and training migrants on how to not assimilate into the U.S., how to organize rallies, marches, protests, and lobbying U.S. politicians. You will recall the violent protests in L.A. end of last year. Remember how many Mexican flags there were all over the place? That is all done intentionally, and you can tell who's supporting and sponsoring that protest. The main political party in Mexico, the Morena Party, has a network of party chapters in our country in 49 states. They're all over. They also have their own TV station called Migrant TV. It is Subversion, and they have a free hotline service for any type of legal representation these migrants should need.
It's unbelievable, Irene. It really is. And as you mentioned, we research our facts before presenting them to you. One of the best and few investigative journalists, Peter Schweitzer, just published a book called The Invisible Coup, which I can't recommend enough. He has documented these facts, and even reading it halfway through, your hair will stand on end at some of the things going on to subvert our country, weaponizing mass migration. We highly recommend it. Also, many of our facts come from the Government Accountability Institute and the Hoover Institution.
Yeah, that's a really great book. We got a lot of information from there.
Yes, we did.
Mexican activists have joined with the American radical left and progressive groups. They act aggressively and brazenly, and the media totally ignore it. Mexican workers in the United States send approximately $24 billion annually back to Mexico to their families. So these migrant workers provide an economic boon to the country. Folks, the rough estimate of illegal immigrants that came into this country during the Biden administration is approximately 20 million. However, you need to know that this mass migration effort began 30 years earlier with our former presidents, Clinton and Obama. They set up what they called the citizenship machine. So you really can't blame Biden alone. In 96, an election year for Clinton, 1.2 million new citizens were processed, and 85% of them voted for Clinton. How did that happen? Well, Clinton put out directives to the INS, or the Immigration and Naturalization Service, that requirements for citizenship should be pretty much dummied down and applications should be pushed through very quickly. For example, they stopped vetting or reviewing arrest records and did not care if applicants could speak or even read English. Also, no fingerprints were ever taken. And those employees in the INS who opposed this were transferred immediately, and supervisors were put in place who would enforce the new policy. Well, this worked so well for Clinton that Obama replicated the success. Again, citizenship requirements were virtually ignored in 96, 2008, and 2022, which became the biggest years for naturalization in the history of this country. Obama sent letters to 9 million green card holders, urging them to naturalize before the 2016 election date. He also waived the $680 application fee.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Irene, do you remember Mayorkas?
Oh, yeah.
Under the Obama administration in 2009, he pushed to ram through citizenship applications without conforming to the requisite requirements for the applications. Again, no vetting of arrest records, no problem. Even if they didn't speak English, that wasn't a problem at all. California ran a lottery for those who registered to vote or applied for citizenship with a Chevrolet Camaro as a prize.
Wow.
Whoa, that's pretty cool, huh? And Tony Blair, he got very excited over in the UK. Yeah, former Prime Minister of Great Britain. He liked their successes so much that he did the same thing in 1998. And it netted him 3.6 million foreign immigrants in England. Isn't that wonderful? Mass migration has really changed California, Arizona, and Nevada, moving it from far left and giving them more national power and making elections easier to win. 4.8 million illegals by 2020 California resulted in 11 more congressional seats. Clinton also started up a program called EB5, whereby foreigners could invest 1.5 million US dollars and create 10 jobs and would then be granted permanent residence status or green cards. Plus, they could also sponsor their entire families, Irene. You know, you can't make this stuff up. And well, here's something. Why don't you guess at this? 90% of these investors were from what country?
China.
China.
Yeah, and here's my favorite all time. Across the United States, we have about 16 flight or aviation schools which are operating in U.S. tax-funded airports. They are now training Chinese cadets. Yes, it's true. China needs 5,000 pilots annually to meet their military machine requirements, but they can only produce 1,200. These cadets apply for student visas to the U.S. and then enroll in training programs to become pilots in these flight schools. Folks, this is another thing you just can't make it up.
No.
And I guess they didn't learn it all from 9/11 when those people were trained in our aviation schools. And that schooling costs them $90,000 person. The Chinese are paying for it.
Wow. Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
And the Chinese are really the biggest offenders of subversive mass migration. For the past 15 years, they have been using what we call birth tourism to do this. That is, pregnant Chinese women travel to the U.S. to deliver their babies, which they believe will be U.S. citizens. They then take them back to China to raise them. And when these children are 21, they can come back to the U.S. to apply for residency and apply for residential status again for their entire families. Another part of this birth tourism initiative by the Chinese is surrogate tourism, whereby Chinese hire American women to be surrogate mothers to deliver their babies for a fee, of course. Then they take them back to China to be raised. This surrogate tourism has become a booming industry in the United States, and there are hundreds of companies here owned by Chinese engaged in this practice. One scholar said that there are approximately 100,000 Chinese babies born in the U.S. every year, and that there are now over 1.5 million who are growing up in China.
It's mind-boggling, it really
Yes.
is. And there are many other significant players or influencers in this mass migration initiative. They're the Muslim Brotherhood, and they seek the ultimate destruction of American civilization. And they say the only way is jihad. Jihad is our way. They're in complete opposition to the American way of life. And did you know that Obama appointed 6 Muslim Brotherhood activists to positions in his administration while he was president, Irene? Did you know that? Now, the current administration keeps talking about putting them on the terrorist watch list, but so far no action on this has been taken. And I don't know what they're waiting for. I really don't. Something has to be done. Then there's CARE, the Council of American Islamic Relations. This is a group that advocates for radical extremism, funding of radical Islamic studies, etc. Officials from CARE visited the White House under Obama more than 20 times. Then there's another group called CASA, C-A-S-A. This is a Muslim extremist group with members in 46 of our states. You remember Senator Van Hollen? You'll recall him because he supported Kilmar Garcia, or the Maryland Dad, who was such a great guy, a great
You're
father and
right.
husband, and he even went to Salvatore to visit him. Senator Van Hollen, a Democrat from Maryland, had his entire campaign funded by funds from CASA. Now, did you know that? Did any
No,
of you know that?
no. And here's another troubling participant in all of this, the UN. They handed out debit cards and cash vouchers for migrants for several years from many different countries. Drug cartels also played a huge part. They made approximately 2 to 6 billion to funnel illegal migrants into the U.S. That's 2 to 6 billion. That's a rough estimate. They also were finding children to accompany migrants because they knew that those who had children could get in a lot quicker and easier. And they even rented children to people. Many of these children were abandoned after entry. In fact, I know the administration talks about close to like 400,000 that have been lost. It's very sad.
Mm-hmm.
Another one that's really shocking, Pope Francis was
Yeah.
a huge champion of mass migration, and he often traveled to Latin America to meet with radical groups. He said that immigration is a right that is in these sacred scriptures.
Where is that?
I don't know. He assisted the Roman Catholic Church to change its principles into liberation theology. And experts are now saying that Pope Leo, who followed him, will follow up in the same way and considers the U.S. the evil empire. They are radically trying to transform Catholicism. It's very, very sad.
Yeah, this is a guy that was born in the United States, right?
Right, Chicago, yeah.
Yeah. Bernie Sanders, here's a guy, nice guy, formed the Progressive International Group with more than 70 member organizations worldwide. And they were all tied to the Democratic Socialists of America, along with AOC. They're also tied, I don't know if anybody knows this, to drug cartels and human trafficking for their funding. He also appointed Bar Omish as co-chair of his 2020 campaign, who's just happens to be the daughter of the president of the Muslim American Society. You know, can't make this up. AOC, together with a well-known radical Islamist, Linda Sarsour, lined the Universal Muslim Association of America, and that was in 2024. And this provided a platform for American Shia Muslims to advance political, social, economic, and religious goals important to their community. And they're all close friends.
Yeah, it's really hard to imagine, hard to
Yeah.
believe.
That's
So now that you know about some of the outside influencers that are currently trying to subvert our country and have been doing so for some time, for many years actually, Beverly's going to walk us through what happened to Europe is they experienced all of this about 15 years before we did, and it's a lesson to be learned by us. Beverly?
Well, mass immigration had an enormous impact on the politics, economics, and the culture of Europe since the Arab Spring in 2011. I mean, it was going on a lot before then, but from the Arab Spring in 2011, it really had a dramatic turn of events. Many of us witnessed via our media the consequences of this migration to Europe. And then Irene and I are here to tell you what triggered it and the extreme impact it had. It began with a series of pro democracy, anti government protests, uprisings, and armed rebellions in Tunisia that became known as the Tunisian Revolution. At that time, Tunisia was experiencing an unemployment rate of 30%, which was quite significant. There were public protests and violence over autocratic regimes, along with economic hardships, persecution, and a lot of poverty. These protests became more violent in response to the death of a street vendor, Mohamed Bouazizi. He set himself on fire because government officials seized his wares. And by the way, his wares were vegetables that he was trying to sell, and they publicly humiliated him. The protests escalated because of this, and it inspired protests in other Arab countries and also in Africa. Bouazizi's actions triggered countless self-immolations, imitating his own protests and elevating him. It elevated him to hero status. Everybody was just, they wanted to be like him. Because of this revolution, millions of immigrants fled violence and persecution from Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, and Yemen, seeking sanctuary from wars, repression, and economic instability.
Beverly, where did they try to emigrate to?
One guess, where could they? To Europe, of course, which became inundated with mass migration. This created friction across Europe. Irene, it strained the healthcare, education, and social systems and reshaped the political and cultural landscape. Security was threatened because of the increased crime from non citizens, and this fueled anxiety among the public. It also led to cross border crimes, such as document fraud, smuggling of illegal goods and weapons, and the biggie, human trafficking. Some economists thought migration was going to ease the labor force, but they didn't factor in the fact that many of the migrants had no skills and were unable to communicate because of language barriers.
And recently, our Vice President, J.D. Vance, who traveled to Europe, said Europe is heading for civilization suicide. He made this statement at the Munich Security Council in February of last year. And this was due to Europe's inability to control their borders and a failure to deal with illegal immigration. Vance further stated that if Germany continues to take in large amounts of immigrants, it will kill itself.
I don't know, speaking of Germany, Irene, in Berlin, cultural life has become very diverse because of the Middle Eastern influence. Islam is the fastest growing religion in Germany, and Muslims account for 5.5 million people. The birth rate among Muslims has skyrocketed. Muslims are younger, they have more children than non Muslims, and in Germany, Arabic is a common language on the streets and in the workplace. But it's also led to a tense social environment for the German youth, and it's led to gang violence. France has seen a 22% increase in newborns of foreign born parents. While integration has been successful for some migrants, 57% of some groups, like the Afghan refugees, remain unemployed for 18 months after integration. And as of 2026, the Muslim population in France is between 6 and 7 million people, or 9 to 10% of the population, which is very significant. Islam is the second largest religion in France and has contributed to a significant demographic shift through generational renewal. There's been a sharp rise in security concerns, and as of mid 2025, 72% of French citizens think that there's a definite link between immigration and national insecurity. A 2023 survey estimated the cost of immigration, and it's staggering, Irene, 53.9 billion euros per year. And this may not be the true picture. Some calculate it to even be more. You talk about draining national budgets. Here's a prime example of how much is spent of taxpayer dollars on illegal immigration.
And I'm sure we're paying as much, if not more, right now to cover all the benefits that these illegals in our country are getting.
True.
In the UK, mass illegal migration has reached a historic peak of almost 1 million in early 23. High migration levels caused a housing crisis, with soaring rental costs causing extra hardship on UK citizens. They have really suffered a lot. There is also added pressure on healthcare services. And since healthcare is free for everyone in the UK, services for illegal immigrants or asylum seekers are funded by the UK taxpayers, the way we're funding ours here.
Yeah.
Note the parallels.
Yeah.
Mass
Doesn't take
mi-
rocket science, you know.
no. Mass migration in Europe has played a significant role in impacting public services, social cohesion, and the economy because of the open border policies of these countries. Folks, this is the result, or what happens when you keep your borders open. And we're starting to see that now, whereas countries like Hungary, Poland, Slovakia, and Czechia have seen historically low immigration because of implemented national laws to speed up deportations and to restrict asylum access.
Well, Irene, I have to tell you, I'm a very proud Hungarian. Okay. Although I have Slavonic roots too, but my Hungarian roots are very strong. And Hungary and Poland are good examples of how to deal with immigration in a better way. Hungary, under Prime Minister Viktor Orban, curtailed mass migration by placing physical barriers and implementing stricter border control with a 108-mile fence along the border with Serbia extending all the way into Croatia. He implemented thousands of police and military personnel to patrol the borders. Orban's policy of requiring asylum seekers to submit a declaration at Hungarian embassies in Serbia or Ukraine had to be submitted before they were allowed to enter the country. This was a legal hurdle for many migrants, and I think it helped them to decide to keep on walking past these borders. Hungary remains to this day a country that maintains its stance on migration through total political noncompliance with EU mandates, physical border defense, and has maintained their pledge not to accept a single migrant under the new EU migration and asylum pact. And their argument is very simple. It's for the cultural preservation and protection of Christian identity and rejection of multiculturalism. In early 2026, Orban stated that Western Europe has given up its classical civilization, whereas Hungary will follow its own Hungarian path to safeguard its culture and Christianity. This is just the tip of the iceberg, folks. Mass migration in Europe and the Scandinavian countries has had a significant impact on public sentiment and the desire for more restrictive measures. 60% of Europeans favor a large decrease in new arrivals, where some support a complete freeze on new migrants.
Yeah, Orban is a good man. And as a result, though, a lot of the other European countries can't stand him.
Yeah, because he's succeeding. That's why.
Well, and he's not following what they're doing. So he's
Yeah.
become an outcast.
Why do they hate Trump? Because he's succeeding. Same
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. So that's what happened to our neighbors in Europe, folks. And many of them now are regretting their open border policies. But it seems the damage has already been done. It seems unlikely that they will ever be able to recover. We hope they do somewhat. But back here in the USA, American progressives use radicalized migrants to advance their socialist agendas that most Americans oppose. And there are many more that we have not had time to list here. Again, as we mentioned in a past episode, the far left, progressives, or Democrats will do anything and everything. I repeat, they will do anything and everything to hold on to their illegals. This is all they have to get power, to ensure that the numbers will create redistricting in states to get more congressional seats and electoral votes. That's all they care about. Certainly not about you or how How long it takes you to get into an ER, you wanna spend 20 hours there, that's no problem. The schooling for your child or criminals in your neighborhood or neighbors being killed or raped, they don't care. They don't care how illegal immigration impacts you or your family. It's all about the power they're able to get. It's
Power
that
and
simple.
yep.
And we need to recognize it as it's happening right now before it's too late. And keep in mind, the census counts all residents, regardless of their citizenship or origin, and that's how the Democrats are able to do this. Beverly?
Listen, it's up to all of us seniors to stand behind President Trump and to support his endeavors by voting, especially with the midterm elections. Republicans need to keep the House and the Senate. Remember, vote policies, not personalities. Organize activities like home gatherings where you can discuss issues like politics. Invite your Democratic friends. We need each other to protect the America that we all love. Democrats and Republicans make up a democracy. Write to your congressman to see what they're doing to protect us. And this is a big one. Mentor your grandchildren. Provide advice based on your experience. Talk to them about the Constitution, traditionalism, the nuclear family, Almighty God, and Jesus Christ, his son.
Amen.
Yes.
Hopefully, with Trump as president, and we do hope, the government can get certain things accomplished to fight against this subversion, such as recognizing this weaponization of mass migration now and making the public aware of it, rigorous vetting and scrutinizing applicants for citizenship, having greater oversight on the U.S. citizenship process, reviewing and monitoring student visas, which they haven't paid attention to in a long while, enforcing laws that restrict participation of foreign nations, forming political organizations, and interfering in American policies, and expel foreign diplomats and close consulates, like the Mexicans, of nations who are engaged in political activities in the U.S. We should have zero tolerance for this. And as Peter Schweitzer says in his book, our nation of liberty and justice for all that we call America is certainly worth protecting. So God bless you all. God bless America.
Well, thank you all for joining us today. And please share this information with your friends and family and other seniors. It's up to all of us, folks. We can make a difference.
We certainly can. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Let us know what you'd like to hear about. And note that we have new episodes every other Sunday on YouTube and Spotify. So thanks again for joining us today. We'll talk to you then. Goodbye.
Thank you.